Welcome, beautiful souls, and thank you for joining me tonight. This story isn't just about love. It's about truth, heartbreak, and the strength it takes to rebuild when everything you believed in falls apart. It's about a woman who learns that silence can be the sharpest weapon, and a man who realizes too late that love without honesty is an illusion. So sit back, take a deep breath, let the world fade for a moment, and let's begin. Morning sunlight poured into the penthouse, soft gold spilling over marble floors and glass walls that framed the skyline. Everything looked perfect. The roses on the counter, the chilled champagne waiting in a silver bucket, the handwritten note Nancy had left for him beside their wedding photo, to 2 years of forever. She stood barefoot in the kitchen, silk robe brushing her thighs, humming under her breath as she arranged strawberries on a tray. The city moved below her, restless and alive, but inside the apartment there was stillness, a rare, expensive kind. Mark was in his office on a call. She could hear his smooth baritone drifting through the half-closed door. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She smiled, expecting a message from her assistant confirming dinner reservations. Instead, the preview froze her breath. Unknown number. You should see what forever really looks like. Attached, a photo marked Tasha, a hotel room. His hand on her waist. Her best friend's face tilted up toward him. The timestamp, the night before the wedding. The tray trembled in her hands. Strawberries rolled across the counter and dropped soundlessly onto the rug. The world seemed to fold inward. Sound dulled, air thickened. Her thumb shook as she opened the image again, disbelieving. Then another message arrived. A thread of texts, emails, photos, dates, locations. 2 years of betrayal compressed into a screen's glow. Her knees nearly gave out. She caught herself on the counter, heart pounding against her ribs like it wanted out. She scrolled slower this time, forcing herself to absorb it. The dinners, the hotel check-ins, the soft declarations, words once whispered to her, now written to someone else. Tasha, her maid of honor, her sister in everything but blood. For a long moment she couldn't move. Her mind screamed, but her body refused to follow. Then, somewhere beneath the shock, a colder instinct surfaced. Steady, deliberate, almost surgical. She locked her phone, placed it face down, and inhaled until the tremor left her fingers. When Mark entered the kitchen a minute later, loosening his tie, smiling that effortless, disarming smile, Nancy turned to him with the practiced ease of a woman who had learned to perform grace under fire. "Happy anniversary," she said, voice smooth, almost tender. He kissed her cheek, his cologne warm and familiar. "Happy anniversary, baby. You outdid yourself again." She smiled, brushing his lapel, studying his face. No guilt, no flicker of shame. Just charm, confidence. The man who had promised her forever. "Dinner tonight?" she asked. "I invited a few friends." "Of course," he said, grinning. "Wouldn't miss it." When he left for the office, she stood at the window, watching the city blur beneath a thin haze. Her reflection stared back, calm, composed, unreadable. She picked up her phone again, scrolled through the photos one last time, and whispered to the glass, "You'll never see it coming." The night arrived dressed in champagne and gold. The anniversary dinner was more of a spectacle than a celebration, a performance for investors, family, and the curated circle of friends who loved to orbit Mark Evans, billionaire venture capitalist and golden boy of Manhattan finance. Cameras flashed as they entered the ballroom of the Langston Hotel. Nancy's gown shimmered under the chandeliers, silver silk clinging perfectly to her frame. She greeted guests with warmth, her smile effortless, every gesture graceful. Inside her heart was a knife wrapped in silk. Tasha was there, of course she was, radiant in emerald, laughter ringing too loudly across the room. Nancy met her gaze once, a second too long, enough to see the flicker of unease in her friend's eyes. She tilted her head slightly as if to say, "Relax. I know nothing." When Mark placed his arm around her waist during photos, Nancy leaned into him. To the world they were perfection, beauty and power, ambition and devotion wrapped in luxury. The cameras captured her smile, but none of them saw the storm behind it. Dinner flowed with laughter and toasts. Mark stood at the head of the table, glass raised. "To my wife," he began, voice steady, charming. "To 2 years of love, trust, and partnership. I couldn't imagine this life without you." Applause rippled through the room. Nancy lifted her glass, eyes glistening, not with affection but restraint. She touched her flute to his. "Two forever," she said softly, her tone flawless, practiced. The sound of crystal meeting crystal echoed, like a promise already broken. Throughout the evening, she played her part perfectly, leaning close when he whispered, laughing at his jokes, smiling at guests. But every detail she registered, every look between Mark and Tasha, every nervous flicker, every trace of guilt, she filed away with precision. By midnight, the ballroom emptied. Their driver pulled up to the curb, and Nancy slipped into the back seat beside her husband, exhaustion draping her shoulders. Mark's hand found hers. She didn't pull away. "You were incredible tonight," he said softly. "God, I love you." She turned to him, eyes luminous, "I know." The city lights strobed across their faces as the car glided through rain-slick streets. Her reflection in the window watched silently as they passed familiar landmarks. The places that once felt sacred now tainted. At home, Mark poured champagne and kissed her shoulder. His breath was warm against her skin, and for a fleeting second, she remembered what it felt like to believe in them. Then she saw the ghost of that hotel room flash in her mind, and the tenderness turned to ash. He fell asleep quickly, the scent of champagne and cologne thick in the air. Nancy sat beside him, knees drawn up, the dim city light casting his profile in golden shadow. Her gaze lingered on his chest, rising and falling, steady, peaceful, oblivious. She could have screamed. She could have woken him, thrown the phone in his face, demanded answers. But she didn't. That would give him power. That would give him relief. Instead, she reached for her phone and opened her contacts. Her fingers hesitated over a name, Carmen Lewis, attorney and old friend. She didn't press call, not yet. She just stared at it, her reflection faintly visible in the black glass. Her mind replayed the images. His hand on Tasha's waist, the smile she'd trusted. She remembered their vows for better or worse in truth and trust. She whispered into the dark, "You buried those vows, Mark. Now I'll bury the illusion." Outside, rain began to fall again, tapping against the windows like a slow heartbeat. She rose quietly, wrapping herself in a blanket, and walked to the balcony. The city sprawled before her, indifferent and alive, its pulse echoing in the distance. Below, headlights sliced through the mist, the hum of traffic blending with the wind. She felt the cold air on her face, sharp and cleansing. Somewhere deep inside, the grief twisted into something steadier, stronger resolve. Tomorrow she would smile again. She would laugh. She would kiss him. She would stand beside him at every public event. But behind that perfect facade, she would be dismantling his world piece by piece. No one would suspect the perfect wife. No one would see the quiet fire building in her chest. She turned back toward the bedroom, watching his silhouette beneath the soft sheets. "Sleep well," she murmured, voice steady, almost tender. "It's the last peaceful night you'll ever have." The clock ticked softly. The rain fell harder, and somewhere between heartbreak and vengeance, Nancy Martin began to disappear. The woman who loved him dying quietly. The one who would destroy him awakening in her place. Morning light stretched across the penthouse in muted gold, painting the floor in long, fragile streaks. The apartment was too quiet, the kind of silence that felt rehearsed. Nancy stood at the window with a cup of coffee cooling in her hand, watching the city come alive far below. Behind her, Mark hummed to himself, scrolling through his phone, smiling at whatever message flashed across the screen. She had learned to read his patterns when he lied, when he thought he was safe. He always smiled right before he sent her a text, always kissed her forehead when he came home late. It was almost tender how predictable betrayal could be. She turned to him with a faint smile. "You're up early." "Big meeting," he said, setting his phone face down. "Might be a late one tonight." "Of course." She sipped her coffee, pretending not to notice the flicker of guilt that crossed his face. "Do you want me to wait up?" He kissed her cheek. "Don't, I'll probably be exhausted." She smiled again, soft and convincing. "Then I'll make sure you have breakfast waiting when you get back." He left soon after, tie straight, voice calm, footsteps echoing down the marble hallway. The door clicked shut. For a long moment, Nancy stood still, staring at the reflection of herself in the glass. Then she set the coffee down and picked up her phone. A message waited from Carmen. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Nancy typed back, "I've never been more sure." By noon, she was in a downtown cafe, the kind of place where the air smelled like roasted beans and ambition. Carmen sat across from her, sharp as ever, her blazer immaculate, her gaze steady. "This isn't going to be easy," Carmen said quietly. "Mark's name opens doors. If you want to take him down, you'll have to do it without leaving fingerprints." Nancy stirred her drink slowly, eyes on the swirl of cream. "I don't want to ruin him publicly, not yet. I just want the truth, all of it, and when you have it." Then she said softly, "I'll decide what it's worth." Carmen leaned back. "I can connect you with someone, a financial investigator. Discreet, but Nancy, this road changes people. You don't come out of it the same." Nancy smiled faintly, eyes distant. "That's the point." The next weeks unfolded like a carefully scripted play. Nancy became the perfect wife, warm, attentive, supportive. She accompanied Mark to charity galas, laughed at his jokes, placed her hand on his chest for the cameras. She whispered, "I love you," when he least expected it. Watched him soften, believing in her devotion. Behind closed doors she worked. Late at night, when he fell asleep beside her, she'd slip out of bed, her silk robe brushing against the floor, laptop glowing faintly in the dark. Bank statements, transfers, hidden accounts under shell companies, Tasha's name appearing in strange places. The deeper she dug, the more she realized this wasn't just infidelity. It was corruption wrapped in charm. She saved everything. Screenshots, emails, ledgers, tucked away in encrypted folders. She learned the art of patience, the art of smiling through disgust, the art of revenge. One evening, she sat in front of the vanity, fastening diamond earrings as Mark adjusted his cufflinks behind her. Their reflection looked flawless, two people in love, ready for another night of networking and applause. "You look beautiful," he said. She met his gaze in the mirror. "Do I?" he smiled. "You always do." Her fingers lingered on the necklace he'd bought her last anniversary. "It's funny," she said softly, "how beauty can hide almost anything." He kissed her shoulder, oblivious. "Don't be philosophical tonight, baby. Just be you." She turned. Her smile practiced, always. That night's event was a fundraiser for the Langston Foundation, one of Mark's favorite opportunities to parade his charm. Nancy floated beside him through the glittering crowd. Her laughter precise, her posture impeccable. Every camera loved her. Every woman envied her. Every man wanted to be him. She spotted Tasha near the bar, emerald dress hugging her curves, smile too bright, eyes darting nervously toward Nancy and away again. For a moment their gazes met. Nancy approached with the grace of a queen. "Tasha," she said, voice smooth, "it's been a while." Tasha blinked. "Nancy, oh my God, you look stunning, so do you." She handed her a glass of champagne, the liquid catching the light between them. "How's work?" Tasha hesitated. "Busy, you know how it is." "I do." Nancy's smile didn't waver. "And Mark tells me you've been helping him with some charity coordination lately." "That's generous of you." The glass nearly slipped from Tasha's fingers. "Oh, it's nothing like that. I just—" Nancy leaned closer, her perfume faintly sweet, her tone light. "Relax, I'm just teasing." Tasha laughed nervously. "Right, of course." Nancy held her gaze for a heartbeat longer, then smiled warmly. "We should catch up sometime, like old times." "Sure," Tasha said. "I'd like that." Nancy turned, her smile fading as soon as she walked away. Every move was calculated, every word another thread in the web she was weaving. Back home after midnight, Mark was in his study, sipping whiskey, reviewing contracts. Nancy lingered in the doorway, barefoot, hair down, the picture of serenity. "Long day?" she asked. He looked up, eyes softening. "You could say that. Come here." She walked over, slid onto his lap, tracing the edge of his collar. His pulse quickened. She kissed him lightly, tasting whiskey and secrets. "You work too hard," she murmured. "It's for us." She smiled against his mouth. "I know." Her hand brushed the desk, slipping the flash drive she'd hidden earlier into her palm. He never noticed. She pulled away, eyes glowing in the dim light. "Now don't stay up too late," she whispered. He nodded, distracted, already turning back to his screen. She left the room quietly, closing the door behind her. The moment she was alone in the hallway, her smile dropped. She leaned against the wall, the adrenaline hitting her veins like fire. Every lie he told, every false promise, she was collecting them like currency. Weeks turned into months. The facade grew stronger. Mark, convinced of her unwavering love, became careless. He left his phone unlocked. He invited Tasha to events without hesitation, and Nancy watched, recorded, gathered, but vengeance has a cost. Late one night, she stood in their kitchen, staring at her reflection in the dark window. The woman staring back looked composed, elegant, but her eyes were colder now, stripped of softness. She whispered to her reflection, "What have you become?" The question lingered. Somewhere inside, she still remembered the girl who believed in love, in loyalty, in forever. But that girl was fading fast. Still, she couldn't stop. The final move came quietly. Nancy met Carmen in a dim corner of a rooftop lounge overlooking the city. The wind tugged at her hair, the skyline glittering like 1,000 secrets. She handed over the drive. "This is everything," she said. "The money trail, the fake accounts, the proof of the affair. Enough to ruin him." Carmen looked at her, searching her face. "And what do you want me to do with it?" Nancy's gaze drifted toward the horizon. "Not yet. He's not ready to fall. I just want to know that I can make it happen whenever I choose." Carmen nodded. "That's power, Nancy." Nancy smiled faintly. "No, that's justice. Just waiting for its moment." That night, she returned home to find Mark asleep on the couch, his arm draped over a file folder. The TV played quietly in the background. She watched him for a long time. So the rise and fall of his chest, the faint smile even in sleep. For the first time in weeks, she felt something break inside her. Not anger, not even grief, just the hollow ache of knowing she once loved him more than he could ever deserve. She knelt beside him, brushed a hand through his hair, whispering to the dark, "You'll never see it coming. And when you do, it'll already be over." The city hummed beyond the glass, lights flickering against her reflection. She looked at herself one last time, eyes steady, lips curved in a small, knowing smile. The woman who had been betrayed was gone. The one who would rewrite the story was here to stay. The storm broke on a Thursday afternoon. Rain streaked the glass walls of Mark's office, Manhattan's skyline a blur of grey and motion. He was halfway through a conference call when his assistant burst through the door, pale and shaking. "Sir, you need to see this," he frowned, removing his headset. "What's wrong?" She slid a tablet across the desk. The screen lit up with breaking news. A headline splashed across every major financial outlet. Evans Industries, under investigation for fraudulent donations and conflict of interest. Below the headline was a photo of him, hand in hand with Tasha Langston, stepping out of a gala last month. The angle was damning, the implication devastating. Mark's heart froze. He scrolled through the article, seeing his name linked to offshore accounts, falsified charity transactions, and a personal entanglement with a board member. The sources were anonymous, the evidence precise, and the story lethal. He didn't need to guess who had the power to orchestrate something this calculated. Nancy sat in their penthouse, a single glass of wine untouched beside her. The rain whispered against the windows, thunder rolling softly in the distance. The TV played the same report she'd just sent to every major outlet. Anonymous leaks tied to the financial misconduct she'd uncovered. It was a strange feeling, watching his empire begin to tremble. She expected satisfaction, triumph. Instead, there was silence, deep, echoing silence. The phone rang. His name lit the screen. She let it ring once, twice, before answering. Mark. His voice was low, controlled, like someone balancing on the edge of panic. "You did this!" "I don't know what you mean. Don't play games with me, Nancy. You think I don't know how this happened? You're the only one who had access to those accounts." She took a sip of wine, her tone calm. "Maybe you should have been more careful about where your money and your loyalty went." A pause. "You wanted to humiliate me." "No," she said softly. "I wanted you to see what humiliation feels like." His silence on the line was long, heavy. "You don't know what you've done." Her lips curved slightly. "No, Mark, I finally know exactly what I've done." She hung up before he could speak again. By nightfall, the story had spread across every network. Investors began pulling out. The board scheduled an emergency meeting. Mark's phone wouldn't stop ringing. He sat in the dark of his office, head in his hands, the city's lights flickering below like shards of judgment. He had built everything from charm and control, and now both were slipping. He thought of Nancy, her steady eyes, her quiet grace, the way she'd been distant lately. The way she smiled at him like she knew something he didn't. And then he remembered. The day of their anniversary. The way her smile hadn't reached her eyes. She had known. She had known all along. Nancy walked into their bedroom hours later. The smell of rain still clinging to her coat. She took off her earrings, placed them neatly on the vanity, and looked at herself in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the same one who had cried in this room weeks ago. Her pain had been reshaped into something sharper, more deliberate. She didn't flinch when she heard the door slam open. Mark stood in the doorway, rain-soaked, eyes burning. "What did you do?" She turned slowly. "You should probably dry off before you ruin the floors." "Don't you dare," his voice cracked. "Nancy, tell me you didn't leak that story." Her expression didn't change. "Why, so you can feel better about betraying me." He stepped closer, water dripping from his coat. "This isn't just about me. You've destroyed my company. Our reputation, our—" She laughed quietly, the sound cutting through the room like glass. "There hasn't been an us since the night before our wedding. Remember her? My best friend." His face fell, the color draining. "You found out." "I found everything," she said, her voice low and trembling with restrained fury. "The lies, the nights, the messages. 2 years of watching you hold me with the same hands you used to touch her." He moved closer, desperate. "Nancy, I made a mistake. You made a choice." Her words snapped through the air. "And now I've made mine." He stopped a few feet from her, breathing hard. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to feel the weight of what you did," she said quietly. "I want you to lose sleep. I want you to know what it's like to be stripped bare in front of the world. And I want you to live long, enough to realize you destroyed the only person who ever truly loved you." Mark's voice broke. "I never stopped loving you." She closed her eyes. "Then you shouldn't have stopped respecting me." The silence between them was deafening. When she opened her eyes again, there were tears, but not weakness. "Strength, clarity, get out," she whispered, "before I make the next leak public." He stood frozen, then turned and walked out, the sound of the door echoing like a final sentence. Days turned into weeks. The media storm raged. Tasha fled the city, chased by scandal and shame. Mark's company spiraled under investigation. And Nancy became untouchable. Her calm composure on camera, her poised silence, turned her into a symbol of grace under betrayal. Fashion magazines called her the woman who rose from ashes. But at night, alone in her new apartment, she would sit by the window and wonder when revenge had stopped feeling like justice and started feeling like grief. One night there was a knock on her door. When she opened it, Mark stood there, thinner, paler, the arrogance gone. He looked human. "I need to talk," he said softly. She hesitated, then stepped aside. He stood in her living room, taking in the changes, her art, her calm, the quiet absence of him. "You moved out." "I had to," she said. "That penthouse was a graveyard." He nodded, eyes lowered. "I deserved that." There was a long pause before he spoke again. "They're removing me from the board. The investigation's closing, but it's over. Everything I built, and Tasha gone. I haven't seen her in months." Nancy folded her arms. "So now you've lost everything. Is this where I'm supposed to forgive you?" He looked up, eyes red. "No, I came to tell you you were right. About all of it." Her chest tightened despite herself. I don't want your pity," he said. "I just want you to know I was never in love with her." "I thought I was." "She was easy." "You," he swallowed hard. "You made me face who I was, and I was too weak to be that man." The confession hit her like wind, painful, hollow. She turned away, voice trembling. "You don't get to say that now. You don't get to make it mean something." "I know." He stepped closer, his voice low. "But if I could take it back, if I could go back to that night before our wedding, I'd choose you every time." Nancy's eyes filled. "You already did choose, and it wasn't me." For a long time, neither of them spoke. He looked at her one last time, eyes filled with regret. "Goodbye, Nancy." When the door closed behind him, the silence was heavier than before, but cleaner somehow, like the first breath after drowning. She walked to the window, staring out at the city lights. Somewhere in the chaos, she felt something inside her finally let go. Maybe forgiveness wasn't the same as forgetting. Maybe letting go wasn't weakness, it was survival. She whispered to the skyline, "We both buried the vow. Now I can live again." The city glimmered in the distance, indifferent yet alive, just like her. The city was quiet, but Manhattan never truly slept. Streetlights reflected in puddles from the early morning drizzle, painting streaks of gold and silver on the asphalt. Nancy Martin stood on her new balcony, wrapped in a soft cashmere sweater, the wind tugging lightly at her hair. For the first time in months, the silence didn't feel heavy. It was hers. She inhaled deeply, letting the crisp October air fill her lungs, steadying the pulse of her heart. She had survived betrayal, scandal, and heartbreak. Now the weight she carried was different. It was freedom. Her phone buzzed on the table behind her. She didn't need to check it to know who it was. Mark. She hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen. He had requested one last meeting. Not to rekindle what was broken, she reminded herself, but to say goodbye properly, to confront the truth, to perhaps seek some form of reconciliation or forgiveness. Nancy finally swiped and accepted the call. Where, she asked, calm but deliberate. Gallery 42, he said, voice low. Restrained, quiet, public, just closure. Nancy, please. She nodded to herself and hung up, slipping on her coat, letting her heels click softly against the polished wood floor. The walk to the gallery felt unusually light, each step measured, deliberate. She was in control now. No one else could define her narrative. The gallery was small but elegant, white walls punctuated with bold splashes of color from contemporary pieces. Light streamed through the tall windows, soft and diffused, painting both of them in shades of warmth and shadow. Mark was already there, standing before a large abstract canvas. His posture was rigid, shoulders tight, hands fidgeting slightly, a stark contrast to the confident, commanding man she had once married. Nancy regarded him quietly, letting the silence stretch. Her eyes traced the familiar contours of his face, the lines of worry that had deepened since the scandal, the tension at the edges of his mouth, the subtle flicker of vulnerability in his eyes. She had spent months imagining this moment, and now that it was here, it was raw, unpolished, real. Mark swallowed hard, nodding. I know. I cannot undo the past. I cannot erase the pain I caused you. But I need you to hear me. I need you to know the truth, even if it doesn't change anything. Nancy studied him, seeing not the man who had betrayed her, but the man who was now facing the consequences of his choices, stripped bare of arrogance and entitlement. Go on, she said, voice measured. I've lost everything, he admitted, stepping closer, but maintaining the fragile distance between them. I lost your trust, your love, and I let temptation, foolishness, and weakness dictate my decisions. I've been haunted by it every single day, and I don't expect you to forgive me. So I just needed you to know that I am not proud of who I became. Her chest tightened, the old ache of betrayal stirring alongside the new rhythm of self-possession. She felt the pull of memories, the warmth of his hand, the intimacy of late nights, laughter spilling through their apartment. But she countered it with clarity. She had survived. She had risen. She was not the same woman who had crumbled on that anniversary morning. Mark, she said finally, her voice steady, calm, but carrying the weight of months of reflection, you have to understand something. Love alone cannot repair what you've broken. I cannot trust you the way I once did. And our marriage, cannot continue as it was. We are done. The words hit him like a cold wind, and for a moment, his confident mask faltered entirely. His eyes glistened, guilt and regret raw and unshielded. Done, he repeated, almost whispering, as if the word itself could shatter him further. Yes, she said softly, yet with unwavering resolve. We were once partners, yes, but betrayal is not just about a single act. It's the erosion of everything we built together. I cannot live in that shadow. I need closure, not illusion. Mark exhaled slowly, the weight of reality settling in. I understand, he admitted, voice thick with emotion. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I only hoped you'd let me say goodbye properly. Nancy nodded, feeling a strange mix of sorrow and liberation. This was the goodbye she needed. Not a final act of vengeance, but an acknowledgement of truth. This is goodbye, Mark, not because I don't care, but because I care enough about myself to move forward. They walked slowly through the gallery, past canvases that blurred into abstract reflections of their lives, colors clashing and converging, broken lines forming new patterns. Each step was deliberate, each glance carefully measured. The intimacy was there, yes, but not the vulnerability of dependence, only the weight of shared history, of lessons learned, of hearts tempered by fire. At the balcony, rain had begun to fall lightly, streaking the city in shimmering lines of silver. Nancy leaned against the railing, letting the drops kiss her face. Mark mirrored her stance, close but respectful, silent in the shared space of reflection. "I remember our first anniversary," Mark said quietly, voice barely above the rain. "You smiled at me like I was the only person in the room. I remember thinking nothing could ever hurt me as long as I had you." Nancy allowed herself a small private smile. "I remember too," she said softly, "but life isn't about pretending nothing can hurt us. It's about surviving when it does." Mark nodded, swallowing hard. "I will spend the rest of my life trying to make sense of my mistakes," he said, voice trembling. "I will accept whatever you choose, even if it means I never see you again." Nancy took a deep breath, letting the wind fill her lungs, grounding herself. "I choose myself," she said, "and I will carry the lessons of us forward, but not the pain, not the illusion. I am not broken. I am whole." Mark's eyes glistened as he reached out, brushing a gentle hand against hers. "No claim, no expectation, only acknowledgement." "You are extraordinary," he whispered. "And so are you," she said softly. "But extraordinary isn't always enough to save love. Sometimes it's enough to move on." They lingered for a moment, the city below alive, indifferent, beautiful, and then quietly Nancy stepped back. The distance between them became a symbolic closure, a line drawn not in anger but in clarity. As she walked away through the rain-slick streets, heels clicking on the wet pavement, she felt something she hadn't in months: lightness. The city glimmered around her, indifferent yet alive, a reflection of the possibilities ahead. She had survived betrayal, scandal, and heartbreak. She had chosen herself, her freedom, her future. And in that choice, Nancy Martin realized something profound. The vows they had buried weren't meaningless. They had taught her the value of truth, of resilience, and of self-love. Love could be reborn, yes, but sometimes the greatest act of love is giving it to yourself first. The city stretched endlessly before her, each light a promise, each shadow a reminder of the past she had conquered. And as she disappeared into the glowing streets of Manhattan, Nancy knew one thing with certainty: she was unbroken, unstoppable, and finally fully free. Thank you for sharing this moment with me. This story wasn't just about heartbreak. It was about healing, forgiveness, and the quiet power that comes when you choose yourself after being broken. Sometimes love doesn't return, but peace does. And sometimes the goodbye you feared becomes the beginning you needed. If this story touched your heart, hold on to that feeling, because every ending carries the seed of something new. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heartfelt stories. Until next time, keep your heart open, stay kind to your soul, and never stop believing in your own strength. Vintage Mike Tales.